our Health Minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, confirming that the chemical found in possession or in the bodies of the the children who died is not necessarily linked to any spaza shop, at least not yet. The minister announcing earlier this morning that the cause of the death of the 6 children is a chemical called organophosphate. Motsoaledi making that announcement earlier on today following a media briefing on the food poisoning investigations that have been ongoing in Gauteng. Let's make sense of the findings with toxicologist Dr. Gerhard Verdoorn, who joins us via our telephone line this morning. Doc, thank you for your time and for offering your insights at short notice. We really do appreciate it. The last time you and I spoke about what took place in Naledi, you did mention that you suspect a pesticide was used. Are we able to start by just unpacking what this organophosphate is? My understanding is that it's actually a collection or a group of compounds.
Yeah, well, it doesn't make much sense because you can't talk about organophosphate because, like you say, it's a collective group of a different number of pesticides. And in Africa, for example, there must be at least 30 different organophosphates in the market. And on top of that, we also have the carbamate, of which aldicarb is the chemical which has been all over the show for the last couple of months in terms of human mortality and other things. So I can't understand why the Department of Health and Minister cannot come forward and tell us which organophosphate. Because my suspicion would be if they point to organophosphate, it might have been dichlorphosphate, it might have been methanelophosphate, it might have been the ethanol for that matter, because we know for a fact that all these chemicals are illegally decanted and sold illegally to our people in Africa from other shops and from street vendors and by syndicates out there.
Yeah.
But come to us and to tell us organophosphate. To me, as a chemist and toxicologist, my question is which one? If you don't know which one,
if I can come in there, Doc.
We hit in the dark.
I think they did make mention of turbophos. I'm not sure if that helps in any way.
Yeah, turbophos, then if they talk about turbophos, then I would say, right, now we're getting to something which is real scientific because I know for a fact that turbophos is also all over the place, especially in Gauteng, part of the Free State and the part of the Northwest Province and Pará. So that is one of the chemicals which is absolutely lethal, and we know that it's being sold legally. We know it's stolen from farm stores and from warehouses, and also packaged illegally. And the chance of escaping an injection of turbophos is very much the same as aldicarb, which is a carbamate. Your chance is virtually nothing because it's rapidly acting. Like I explained, it causes that suppression of the central nervous system. It causes collapse of the diaphragm, in other words, the lungs collapse. If people can't breathe, they become blue, they become cyanotic, and they die from oxygen starvation. So that starts making sense.
Yeah.
That's what I think. But there's also other organophosphates in the market that I think we should look at because there are some cases where lots of people got poisoned that they recover because that particular organophosphate is not at the same level as, for example, turbophos. But if we talk about turbophos, then I start getting a good idea of what's going on there.
Sure. Given that information then, did these children have any chance? I know mortality rates when it comes to ingesting any kind of poison depends on a number of variables, including how quickly an antidote can be administered. But given that these were small children in many ways still developing their own immune system and how toxic the substance was there any chance of survival here?
I don't think so because I've been involved with cases where dogs were poisoned by crime syndicates and having certain veterinarians, and the veterinarians are always quite successful when they get an aldicarb case with a dog and they give the dog the atropine sulfate antidote. But all of them told me when they got a dog that ingested turbophos, the survival rate was absolutely nothing. And I've known also cases where cattle got poisoned with turbophos and the survival rate there was also extremely low. So turbophos is one of those funny organophosphates which is extremely toxic. It does not respond well to the treatment, which is atropine sulfate, and when it goes into the digestive system, it oxidizes and it oxidizes again, and the secondary oxidase, which is turbophosphorone, is much more toxic than the primary compound. So you've got a double whammy there. With the primary compound and the second metabolite is also much more toxic than the primary one. So anybody ingesting turbophos has got virtually no chance of surviving that. And normally when children eat food which is contaminated like this, like we had in Eastern Cape a couple of years ago with a so-called noodle case, the children don't stand a chance. So normally within 1.5 hours, they're all dead.
And that correlates, I suppose, with what we saw take place in Naledi some weeks ago. What I found very interesting, Doc, is that there's still no link to any spaza shop. In fact, the health minister telling that media briefing earlier today that they're still waiting for the results of swabs they've taken there. But again, just listening to how you describe the toxicity of this turbifos, I wonder if it were in that spaza shop, if any other people may have been affected by now.
I'm sure there's other people affected because remember, not everybody that gets affected by poison will pick up the symptoms or leave for symptoms because they might ingest only very small quantities. That's the first thing. Secondly is that people buy the stuff on the street corners from vendors to take it home as what they call a rodent movie or a rodenticide. It's wrong then because it's actually not a rodenticide. It's an illegal pesticide. And when they take it home, it is not properly managed because it's not properly labeled. It's unregistered. It doesn't have a container. And very often people mistake that, for example, for pepper or something like that. Just like happens with aldehyde. So you can actually, on a scale, you can put aldehyde on the left-hand side. You can just put toxicity on the other side. These two chemicals are equally toxic. And people mistake them then for an edible commodity like pepper. And I've had cases where people put it into their food because they think it's pepper. And the result is only one thing, a total fatality. So I think there's a contamination possibility at the vendor or at the spaza shop, but there's an even bigger contamination possibility at the home where people take it home, so they buy it from the street vendor and they forget about the fact it's a poison, it gets into the food, it is not properly managed, or the food is contaminated even in the spaza shop. And I can tell you need a small quantity to kill a young child within an hour and a half.
Sure. Sobering indeed. Are you able to speak to us a bit more, Doc, about how this actually interacts with the body, how this poison interacts with the body? Because I found what the minister said about, the danger is quite interesting. Apparently, we don't even have to ingest it to be affected. Sometimes, if it just makes contact with your skin and makes it into your system that way, you could still be in danger.
Yeah, not all pesticides are absorbed by the skin, but aldehyde and turbifos both absorbed by the skin, so you will absorb it. And it has to be in contact with the skin for quite a long time to get to the toxic level. The problem is that both of these chemicals are also volatile off the surface of the granule, which is an inert material. So if it gets wet or moist, it starts being dissolved from the surface. It becomes volatile, and if you inhale enough of that stuff, it will also cause a toxicity, which is a fancy word for showing that you've got poison symptoms. In other words, I showed my colleagues last night from the food channel that if you open that bag of aldehyde, you get that terrible pungent odor. The same thing with turbifos. So if the turbifos starts getting moist, you pick up that terrible odor. If you make dermal contact, it goes through your skin, into your epiderm, into your blood system, and it goes into your whole body, and it starts affecting your central nervous system. And like the minister also said this morning, it starts shutting down the breathing apparatus in the body, which is your diaphragm and your lungs. So people often say it's a very cruel way of dying. Yes, it is a cruel way. Luckily, because it's so powerful in terms of suppressing the central nervous system, seldom has ever pain involved. But there's a panic involved because people want to breathe, they can't breathe, they're fully aware of what's going on around them, and eventually they die from either asphyxiation, the vomiting to the lungs, or they die from the lack of oxygen because they cannot breathe properly.
Sure. Wow. What a horrible way for these children to spend their last moments on earth. Dr. Verdoorn, thanks very much indeed for helping us, I suppose, make sense of what we know so far. I appreciate, of course, still many unanswered questions because we don't know where these children may have come in contact with this turbifos. It's a type of organophosphate that the minister has now spoken about as having had unequivocally caused the deaths of those 6 children in Naledi and Soweto. Dr. Gerhard Verdoorn is a toxicologist, and as always, Doc, we really do appreciate your time.